Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is really exciting because I will finally be reviewing the ARRTX Acrylic Markers. They sent me the 60 color set for review and I've been using them for a month now. I'm honestly so impressed by these, so I'm really excited to share my thoughts with you guys. And also for this video, I will be doing a portrait sketch for you guys, and as usual, all of the reference photos I used are in my reference board on Pinterest, and that is linked in the description. I also have my Patreon linked on there if you guys are interested in real-time painting tutorials. But if you're someone who likes drawing on sketchbooks or just want a convenient way to add color to your work, I highly recommend you guys watch this video because I think you're gonna love this one. So the first thing I want to talk about is the packaging, and I really love this thing that it comes with. I'm really impressed with it. The box is super sturdy and I really like that it sits well on my desk. It makes me use them more, and I also love that it keeps the markers all organized. I do have a little swatch card on here so I can just keep track of what the colors on the markers actually look like, and I will talk about the color match later on, but I just like how this box sits on my desk, and it's not just sturdy, I also think that the box itself is really pretty. So I also want to talk about the markers themselves. I really like this design, and I love that the color is not the full barrel, because there are some colors that don't fully match their barrels, although the color match is not as bad as some other art supplies, which I will be talking about in future videos too, but I really like the actual markers. It is also a brush nib, which I'm so happy about because I have come to love them. It's not super soft that it'll be hard to get precise straight lines with them, but it's soft enough to feel like you're actually painting with them, which I just love. Also, just a side note, I love the cap on these. It's just so cute. I don't know why, but it speaks to me. I think it's adorable, and I just really love the design on these actual markers. The other thing that I really love about this set in particular is the color selection. They're all very pastel, very colorful, very vibrant. I think that the sets have a nice theme going on with each of the sets, so I really like that. I think if you're someone who works with a certain color palette, you will find one of their sets will speak to you. I will also say, because of the nature of acrylic markers, it's gonna be better to get more colors if you can, just because you can't mix the colors to create different ones. You kind of just have to work with the colors you do end up with. So it's just how it is with mediums like this. You kind of just have to go along with it. It's not like paints where you can get 3 colors and mix the entire rainbow. But yeah, just keep that in mind when you're looking for the set that will work for you. I think the most impressive thing to me is what's inside the markers, whether it's the paint or the ink. I don't really know the right word to use with them, but it's super opaque. The lines that you can get with them are nice and solid, and you can even see in my sketch I used it on lined paper, and you can't see the lines underneath. So I was really impressed by that. And you can get these very vibrant colors without really needing to layer it by itself a bunch of times, which I have found with some weaker markers you have to do that. And the paint itself is thin enough so that it moves into the brush and layers softly onto the paper. I wasn't expecting it to be this thin, just because I was thinking of acrylic paint when I heard about these for the first time. But it is kind of expected though when I really think about it, because it has to move inside the brush nib smoothly without drying out. So yeah, it's kind of thinner than I expected. So you do have to be careful if you're working with very thin paper like I am, because it can warp very thin paper like this, because it moves kind of like watercolors in your paint. So think of painting when you're using these. It will affect your paper in the same way. But look at how even the laydown of color is with these markers. I kind of wish I worked with more solid shapes for this sketch just so I can show you guys how evenly this paint dries. But I was anticipating not having that many colors for a portrait, so I kind of worked with movement in my brush strokes just so I can work around not having that many transition colors. But I have since used this in much bigger solid shapes, and the colors then were not streaky at all. Just very nice and even lay down of color with these markers. I think from ARTRX, this is one of their best performing art supplies. It honestly just feels like a genius medium. And when I first started working with it, I was thinking that it was just so revolutionary and so new. I was just so impressed that I it felt like I never used anything like this before until I took the time to just sit back and think about that, because they kind of feel familiar, and I realized why. And this is kind of just like the Posca pens if you've used them. It's been years since I used one, but I used to use them a lot on my sketchbooks. They're exactly like these. The only difference is that the ones that I used weren't brush nibs. Makes you think about marketing and knowing your target audience, because I think the Posca pens were more geared towards people who does a lot of customizations. They were kind of marketed more towards people who would use them for different surfaces. I think generally these are the same art supplies, but because of how they chose the colors for this and how they decided to market it towards illustration artists and just hobbyists in general, I think that's super cool, and it makes it feel very new. Even though Posca pens have been in the market for such a long time, this feels like it's new even though it isn't. I just really love how they packaged this. So the way I use this for my sketchbook is kind of like how I use my gouache for the same sketchbook. Because the paper on this is very thin, I can't really layer much of my gouache, so I kind of just want a nice solid laydown of color with them. So I will use these markers in the same way that I use my gouache. Very similarly, the only thing is that obviously because these are markers, it doesn't require all that much prep work. I don't need to mix my own paints, and it's just really convenient to just pick up a marker and start working right away. So if you really like that smooth matte finish that gouache can give you, but you don't like the hassle of mixing your paints, getting water, and the cleanup that comes with gouache, I think it's really worth checking this out. Also, if you're just someone who wants to transition into using colors without going into painting fully, I think you would love these ones too. Another thing that I really loved while I was working on this portrait particularly is how well the colors showed up next to each other. So while the colors won't mix with each other, and since it's not paint, you can't mix the colors to create your own, I love that the colors that they chose in this set really work well with each other, and I think that they show up next to each other really well. Especially for this set, it just has this soft pastel vibe that I really like and that I was going for this painting. With specialized set like this, you kind of have to have the art supplies lead your artworks. So you kind of work with the colors that you have, and it sort of decides how your sketches will look like. With other mediums that you can customize for yourself, you can have your own vision for how your painting will look like before you really need to pick your colors. It's just how it is with specialized sets like this. I think it's fun sometimes to just have your art supplies control what you do. I think it's one of the more interesting things you get to do as an artist. What's interesting in this sketch, I think, is that it just doesn't really come together until I start adding in the black. Since there's so many of these colors are pastel and muted, I think initially it just shows up as washed out. And then when we bring in the black, it just brings the entire thing together. The black is almost too dark for this color palette. because it's such a big jump into that dark value, but I really like it. I just turned it into the highlight of the sketch. There's only a very few dark colors in this set, so when I added it in, everything just really popped. And I also just really like the contrast. It makes all the soft pastels stand out more. So while it feels like I've been loving this set, and I have, there's still a couple of cons that I wanted to talk about. And I think the main one for me is that if you're someone who likes to draw different subjects, you might find this set to be a little bit limiting. And if you're someone who mixes your own colors, it might seem crazy to say that about something with 60 colors. But this isn't like that, where you can mix your own colors. You're kind of working again with what's in the set, and that's it. So if you're someone who works with different colors and don't really have a set color palette, you may find that a bigger set than this one will work better for you, but it's just something to consider. Also, like I mentioned earlier, the color accuracy to the barrel could be a bit better. So sometimes these colors aren't what they actually look like in the barrel. But again, because the colors on the markers is not the entire marker, they're just at the top of the pencil and also at the bottom, it's not as restricting. And you will see when I review their colored pencils that helps a lot, because my view on the colored pencils with the color accuracy, I think it's much more of an inconvenience than it is for here. But yeah, that is still something to consider, and that's why if you're getting these, I would always suggest you guys to do a color swatch so you see what the colors actually look like. But again, with this set, because the colors are so small on the marker, it's not much of a deal breaker, at least for me. So overall, I've really been enjoying these ARTRX acrylic markers. They're very easy to use, and the opacity is great. The colors that they have, especially on the set, are beautiful. I reach for them all the time now when I'm doing my sketchbook sketches, because I'm drawing every day on my sketchbook. I actually force myself to not use them so that I can use my other mediums and challenge myself more. But yeah, the only cons I can think of is that the color palette could be a little bit more complete, but that is a very personal opinion, and I think the color accuracy isn't perfect. But for the convenience, I think that these are totally worth it. I really love these ones. They're quickly becoming one of my favorite art supplies, so I highly recommend you guys get these if you were already checking these out. But yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for joining me in this one. This was super fun. Thank you guys for making it through the end. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me. And once again, if you guys want to see real-time portrait tutorials, I do them every month on Patreon. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me, and I will be seeing you guys again soon.